Elderly man plants trees in desert. Years later, the area becomes a lush oasis, benefiting thousands and transforming the landscape forever. Silas Pritchard stood at the edge of a barren field in New Mexico, his eyes scanning the dry earth that stretched endlessly before him. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows that seemed to whisper the memories of a life once filled with laughter and love. Clara, his late wife, had dreamed of a home surrounded by trees and flowers. Now, all that remained was this desolate landscape, echoing with the silence of loss. As he gazed out, a vivid dream flashed through his mind. A lush oasis, vibrant with colors, filled with the sound of rustling leaves and birds singing. It was a stark contrast to the emptiness around him. Silas felt a flicker of something he thought he had lost. Hope. Could it be possible to breathe life back into this dusty land? The thought ignited a long-buried desire within him, one that had been dormant since Clara's passing. He took a deep breath and stepped closer to the empty plot of earth. It loomed large before him, a monumental task that seemed impossible. The voices of the townsfolk echoed in his mind, filled with doubt and mockery. Why waste your time? Nothing grows here. Silas shook his head, trying to dispel their skepticism. Was it really futile? He clenched his fists, his determination building. Gathering seeds and tools from the small shed behind his house, Silas felt a surge of energy. Each item he collected sparked a new wave of determination, pushing aside the doubts that threatened to weigh him down. If not me, then who? He murmured to himself, gripping the tools tightly. He had to try, for Clara, for the dreams they had shared. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink as he began to work the soil. Silas knelt down, his hands digging into the earth, feeling its rough texture beneath his fingers. The ground resisted, hard and unyielding, but he pressed on. "I'll show them," he whispered, imagining the trees that would one day stand tall where nothing grew. Hours passed, and as shadows lengthened, he took a moment to rest. Just then, a small voice broke through the silence. "What are you doing?" Silas looked up to see a young boy, no older than 10, standing at the edge of the plot. His curiosity shone in his bright eyes, and Silas felt a spark of warmth at the sight. "I'm planting seeds," Silas replied, wiping the sweat from his brow. "Trying to bring life back to this land." The boy tilted his head, skepticism flashing across his face. "But it's just dirt. Why would you want to do that?" "Because," Silas began, searching for the right words, "every great thing starts as a tiny seed. Just like hope, you have to believe it can grow." The boy pondered this, his brow furrowing in thought. "Can I help?" he asked suddenly, the eagerness in his voice surprising Silas. "Of course," Silas replied, a smile breaking through his earlier fatigue. "What's your name?" "Ezekiel," the boy said, stepping forward. "I want to see trees too. My mom says they're important." Silas nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. Together, they gathered seeds, and Silas shared stories of the trees he hoped to plant. "This one is an oak," he explained, showing Ezekiel a small acorn. "It will grow strong and provide shade. And this one," he pointed to a tiny sapling, "is a willow. It loves water and will sway beautifully in the wind." As they worked side by side, Silas felt a connection forming. Ezekiel's laughter rang out as he stumbled over a rock, his bright spirit lifting Silas's heavy heart. Maybe this boy, with his youthful energy and curiosity, was just what he needed. If they could plant their seeds together, perhaps they could inspire others to believe in the power of hope. With each seed they planted, Silas felt the weight of the townsfolk's doubt slowly lifting. Maybe, just maybe, he and Ezekiel could turn this barren land into a sanctuary of life. The dream of an oasis, once just a flicker, began to blaze anew, igniting a flame of possibility that would not be easily snuffed out. As dawn broke over the dry landscape of New Mexico, Silas Pritchard knelt before the empty plot of land that had once been full of promise. He felt the rough soil between his fingers, the earth that had been parched for years. With a deep breath, he began to plant the first saplings, his heart filled with hope. However, the moment he set the first young tree into the ground, a group of neighbors gathered nearby, their laughter ringing harshly in the still air. "Look at old Silas, trying to grow a garden in the desert," one man called out, shaking his head. "Why plant when nothing will grow here?" Silas felt the sting of their words, but he kept his gaze fixed on the saplings. He thought of Clara and their dreams of a greener world. "These trees will grow," he muttered under his breath, refusing to let their mockery deter him. Despite the harsh sun beating down on him and the limited tools he had, Silas pressed on. Each seed he planted was a step toward the life he yearned to create. As he worked, he could hear the townspeople whispering among themselves, their doubts echoing in the air. Yet, with every seed he buried, his determination only grew stronger. "Why do you waste your time, Silas?" a woman shouted from the crowd, hands on her hips. "You are just digging in dirt." Silas straightened his back and faced her. "I'm not just digging in dirt. I'm planting hope," he replied, his voice steady. "I believe this land can be beautiful again." The woman scoffed, but Silas turned back to his work, ignoring her disbelief. He was driven by memories of laughter shared with Clara, the dreams they had woven together under the shade of a tree. He could almost hear her voice encouraging him. "You can do this, Silas." Hours passed as he planted sapling after sapling, and the sun climbed higher in the sky. Just when fatigue began to settle in his bones, a small voice broke through the noise of the townspeople. "Can I help you?" A young boy stood nearby, his eyes wide with curiosity. Silas looked down, surprised to see the eagerness in the boy's expression. "Who are you?" Silas asked, wiping sweat from his brow. "I'm Ezekiel," the boy replied, stepping closer. "I saw you planting. I want to help. My mom says it's good to care for the earth." Silas smiled, the boy's enthusiasm lifting his spirits. "All right, Ezekiel. Grab that watering can and fill it up, will you?" Ezekiel nodded eagerly, running to fetch the can. Together, they worked side by side, Silas teaching him how to care for the young trees. "Each tree has a story," Silas explained as they watered the saplings. "They grow strong if we take care of them, just like us." Ezekiel listened intently, his eyes sparkling with wonder. "Will they really grow, Silas, even with the sun so hot and no rain?" "Yes, they will," Silas assured him. "It may take time, but with love and patience, they will thrive." As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the land, Silas felt a bond forming with the boy. Ezekiel's laughter and energy brought a fresh sense of purpose to his mission. They discussed their dreams of a greener world, sharing stories as they worked. "Do you think the others will ever believe in this place?" Ezekiel asked, pausing to wipe his brow. Silas sighed, glancing at the distant town. "Some may never believe, but we have to keep going, Ezekiel. It's not just about the trees, it's about hope. Hope can be as strong as the roots of these trees." Ezekiel nodded, a determined look on his face. "Then let's give them something to believe in," he exclaimed. Morning turned to evening, and as they planted the last sapling of the day, Silas felt a renewed sense of strength. They stood together, looking over the small forest they had begun to create. "Tomorrow, we'll plant more," Silas said with a smile. "And maybe one day, this place will be a true oasis." Ezekiel grinned, his excitement infectious. "I can't wait. We will show them all." And in that moment, Silas knew that this boy was not just helping him plant trees, he was planting the seeds of friendship and hope in Silas's heart as well. As the sun rose over the New Mexico landscape, Silas Pritchard could feel the warmth on his skin, a reminder that life still had its moments of beauty. The work of planting was far from easy, but it had become a routine that he shared with his young friend Ezekiel. The boy's enthusiasm brightened even the toughest days, and Silas found himself looking forward to their time together. One morning, as they dug into the dry earth, Ezekiel looked up with bright eyes. "Mr. Pritchard, Do you think we can make this place look like your dream oasis? Silas paused, wiping the sweat from his brow. I believe we can, Ezekiel. Every tree we plant is a step closer to that dream. Remember, it takes time and patience. Ezekiel nodded, his small hands gripping the shovel tightly. Then let's plant more. I want to see this place change. With a smile, Silas handed him a handful of seeds. Here, these are for you to plant. Each one of these has the potential to grow into something beautiful. As they worked side by side, the wind picked up, swirling dust around them. Silas noticed how the boy leaned into the gusts, unfazed by the harshness of the desert. You're strong, Ezekiel, he said, glancing at the boy. Not many can handle this weather so well. Ezekiel grinned. I want to help you. I want to make a difference. Silas chuckled softly. And you are making a difference. Every seed counts. Each tree is a new chance. With each seed they planted, Silas shared stories of resilience. When I was your age, my father taught me about trees. He said they are like people. They need care, love, and sometimes they need to fight against the storms. Ezekiel listened intently. Did your father have a dream like yours? Silas's expression softened, his thoughts drifting back to Clara. Yes, he did. He wanted to see our land flourish, just like I want to see it now. The boy nodded seriously. Then we will make it happen. I will help you, Mr. Pritchard. We can show everyone that it's possible. Silas felt a swell of pride. The boy's determination was infectious. Together, we can do anything. Just remember, it's not just about the trees. It's about what we are building here, our legacy. As the days turned into weeks, their bond grew stronger. They faced challenges together. The relentless sun, the lack of water, and the doubts from the townsfolk who still mocked Silas's efforts. But with each passing day, Ezekiel became more skilled and confident. One afternoon, they took a break under the shade of a few young saplings they had managed to plant. Ezekiel leaned back against the trunk of a tree, looking up at the blue sky. Mr. Pritchard, do you think the town will ever see what we are doing? Silas sighed, glancing toward the distant houses. I hope so, Ezekiel. They need to see that change is possible. But sometimes people are afraid to believe. Why would they be afraid? Ezekiel asked, genuinely puzzled. Change can be scary, Silas explained. People worry about what they will have to give up or how hard it might be. But if we keep working, maybe they will come around. Ezekiel sat up, his eyes shining with determination. Let's show them. Let's have a big planting day and invite everyone. Silas raised an eyebrow, impressed by the idea. That's a great plan. We can show them the trees we've planted and how they can help. It could bring the community together. With renewed energy, they set to work, planning the event. As they drew closer to the day, excitement filled the air. Silas could feel hope blossoming in his chest, just like the saplings they were nurturing. On the morning of the event, people arrived, curious about what Silas and Ezekiel had been doing. Silas stood up to speak, his voice steady. Thank you all for coming. We've worked hard to bring life back to this land. We want to share our journey with you. Ezekiel stood beside him, looking out at the crowd. We believe that together, we can make this place beautiful. Let's plant these trees and show everyone what we can do. As they began to plant together, Silas realized that their efforts were not just about the trees. They were building a community, a shared dream, and a legacy that would echo through generations. Years slipped away like grains of sand in an hourglass. What once were fragile saplings had become sturdy trees, casting long shadows across the land. Silas Pritchard and Ezekiel stood side by side, marveling at their work. The once barren landscape of New Mexico was now a tapestry of green, a testament to their determination and labor. Look at how tall they've grown, Ezekiel exclaimed, his eyes sparkling with awe. He ran his fingers along the rough bark of one of the trees, feeling its strength. I can't believe we did this together. Silas smiled, pride swelling in his chest. It was not just me, Ezekiel. It was you too. Your energy and ideas brought life to this place. Just as they began to enjoy their achievements, a shadow loomed over them. News of a severe drought reached the community. The sky, once full of promise, turned dry and unforgiving. The trees, though strong, began to show signs of distress. Silas felt a knot tighten in his stomach as he watched their leaves start to curl. "Ezekiel," Silas said quietly, his voice trembling, "I fear for our trees. Without water, everything we've worked for might be lost." Ezekiel's face fell. "But we can still find a way. We can dig deeper wells, or maybe we can gather rainwater." As days turned into weeks, the situation grew worse. The sun beat down mercilessly, and the earth cracked like old paint. Silas, now frail from age, felt the weight of despair pressing on his shoulders. He often found himself staring at the sky, willing it to rain. One evening, as they sat under the shade of their largest tree, Silas turned to Ezekiel. "I understand if you want to leave," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "There are opportunities elsewhere, places where you can thrive without this burden." Ezekiel looked at him, confusion etched on his face. "Leave? But what about our dream? What about the trees? We can't just abandon them now." Silas sighed, a deep sadness in his eyes. "I've put so much hope into this. If it fails..." He paused, the fear of loss choking his words. "Silas," Ezekiel interrupted gently, "we have each other. We can face this together. You taught me that hope is like a seed. It needs care to grow." The young boy's words struck a chord in Silas's heart. "You are right," Silas replied, a flicker of determination igniting within him. "We must not give in to fear. Instead, we should fight for what we believe in." Together, they decided to organize a community meeting. Silas sent out word to the townsfolk, inviting them to come and see the trees that had begun to change their environment. "We will show them our progress," Ezekiel said, his voice filled with hope. "Maybe they will want to help us." On the day of the meeting, Silas stood at the base of the largest tree. The sun hung low in the sky, casting an orange hue over the gathering crowd. He could feel the tension in the air, a mix of skepticism and curiosity. "Thank you all for coming," Silas began, his voice steady despite his fears. "We stand here today at a crossroads. The drought has tested us, but it has also shown us what we can achieve." Some residents looked doubtful, their arms crossed tightly against their chests. "What good is this place if we can't even water the trees?" one voice called from the back. Ezekiel stepped forward, his youthful spirit shining. "But look at what we've done. We've changed this land together. If we work as a community, we can find a way to save them. We can dig deeper wells or share our resources." Silas nodded, encouraged by Ezekiel's words. "This is not just about trees, it's about our community and our future. We need to unite and support one another. Together, we can weather this storm." As the meeting continued, Silas felt a shift in the crowd. Some began to nod, their expressions softening as they listened. Others whispered among themselves, and he could see a spark of hope igniting in their eyes. "Let's do this together," Silas urged. "Let's fight for our dream and for the legacy we want to leave behind." Ezekiel looked around at the faces of their neighbors, a smile breaking across his face. It was a small victory, but it was a start. They would not give up. They would stand together, no matter what challenges lay ahead. In the heart of the drought, Silas and Ezekiel decided it was time to rally the community. They believed that coming together might spark a change in the atmosphere, both literally and figuratively. Silas stood on the porch of his modest home, looking out at the small town of Dry Creek. The sun beat down relentlessly, and the air felt heavy with despair. He turned to Ezekiel, who was busy gathering flyers for their meeting. "Do you think they will come?" Ezekiel asked, a hint of worry in his voice. Silas nodded, though doubt flickered in his eyes. "They need to see what we have done. They need to feel that hope is still alive." With determination, they went door to door, inviting neighbors to the meeting. Some faces were animated with curiosity, while others showed skepticism. Mrs. Jenkins, an elderly woman who had lived in Dry Creek all her life, looked at Silas with raised eyebrows. "Why should we gather? Nothing has changed," she said, her voice firm yet weary. Silas replied, "Change takes time, Mrs. Jenkins. But if we work together, we can make a difference. We have to believe in each other." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the town, Silas and Ezekiel set up chairs in the small community hall. When the time came, townsfolk trickled in, some with arms crossed, others with hopeful smiles. Silas could feel the tension in the room as he stood at the front. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice steady yet soft. "I know times are tough. The drought has tested us all, but I want to share what we have achieved together." He gestured toward a large poster displaying pictures of their trees, now standing tall and green despite the harsh weather. A murmur rippled through the crowd. "Look at these trees," Silas continued, his passion igniting the air. "They are not just trees. They are symbols of our strength, our resolve. They show what we can accomplish when we come together." A young man named Lucas, known for his sharp tongue, stood up. "But what good are they if they die in this drought? We need water, not speeches." Silas took a deep breath, understanding the frustration in Lucas's voice. "You are right, Lucas. We do need water, but we also need each other. We need to fight for these trees and for our community. If we all pitch in, we can water them and keep our hopes alive." Ezekiel stepped forward, eyes bright with enthusiasm. "I've talked to some of the younger folks around town. They want to help. If we all work together, we can make a difference. Let's organize a watering schedule. Everyone can take turns." A woman named Clara, not to be confused with Silas's late wife, chimed in. "That's a great idea. My kids love visiting the trees. They can help carry water. It will be a fun way to spend time together." Silas smiled, heartening the spark of collaboration. "Exactly. Let's show the town that we believe in our future. We are not alone in this fight." As the meeting progressed, the mood began to shift. Laughter and chatter filled the room, replacing the initial skepticism. Silas could see hope rising like the morning sun. After the meeting, as people started to leave, Ezekiel turned to Silas. "Did you see that? They are starting to believe." "Yes," Silas replied, a smile breaking across his weathered face. "This is just the beginning." In the following days, the community came together like never before. Groups formed to gather water from the nearby creek, and children happily filled buckets to help. Silas watched with pride as the younger generation took charge, reinforcing the idea that everyone had a role to play in nurturing their environment. "Thank you for believing in all of us, Silas," Ezekiel said one afternoon as they filled the watering cans together. "You showed us that even in the hardest times, we can still strive for something better." Silas looked at the young boy, feeling a warmth in his chest. "We are all in this together, Ezekiel. That's what makes us strong." With renewed energy and determination, they continued to nurture their trees, and slowly but surely, the spirit of the town began to flourish alongside them. As despair clung to the air like a heavy fog, Silas Pritchard stood in his modest garden, a mixture of hope and fear swirling within him. The parched earth stretched before him, cracked and barren, reflecting the struggle he had faced with Ezekiel over the years. The drought had taken its toll, and Silas could feel the weight of his age pulling him down. "Do you think it will ever rain again?" Silas asked, his voice barely above a whisper. He glanced at Ezekiel, who was kneeling beside a young tree, tending to its roots. The boy looked up, his eyes wide with determination. "I believe it will, Silas. We just have to keep believing," Ezekiel replied, his youthful optimism shining through the gray skies overhead. "Look how far we have come. We can't give up now." Silas nodded, though doubt still lingered in his heart. He had poured every ounce of himself into this land, and now it felt as if everything was slipping away. Just then, as if answering his silent plea, Dark clouds began to gather on the horizon. Silas squinted up at the sky, a flicker of hope igniting within him. Maybe the rain is coming, he mused, taking a step back to survey their work. The trees they had planted, once mere saplings, now stood tall and strong, their branches reaching toward the heavens. It would be a blessing for all of us. Ezekiel jumped to his feet, excitement bubbling inside him. "Let's keep working, just in case," he exclaimed, rushing to grab more watering cans. Silas smiled at the boy's enthusiasm, feeling a warmth spread through him. As they continued their labor, the first drops of rain began to fall, gentle and hesitant at first. Silas looked up, his heart racing. "It's starting!" he shouted, unable to contain his joy. The sound of rain increased, turning into a steady rhythm against the earth. "Look at it, Silas. It's beautiful." Ezekiel danced around, splashing in the puddles forming on the ground. The once dry and dusty land drank in the water, soaking up the life-giving drops. Silas joined Ezekiel, laughter bubbling up as he too felt the exuberance of the moment. Suddenly, the skies opened up and the rain poured down in torrents. Silas and Ezekiel stood together, arms raised toward the heavens, feeling the cool droplets on their skin. It was a moment of pure joy, a moment they had longed for during the grueling months of drought. "This is just the beginning," Silas said, his voice filled with emotion. "We have fought so hard for this. It's not just rain, it's a sign of hope." Ezekiel nodded, his eyes sparkling. "We should tell everyone. They need to see this." The boy dashed off, leaving Silas standing in the rain, a smile plastered on his face. He watched as the landscape transformed before his eyes. The trees danced in the wind, their leaves shimmering with droplets, and the earth began to breathe again. As the rain continued to fall, the townspeople emerged from their homes, drawn by the sound of joy and laughter. They gathered around the garden, their expressions shifting from skepticism to wonder. Silas felt a swell of pride as he saw them marvel at the change taking place. "Silas, Ezekiel, what is happening?" called out one of the townspeople, a woman with a look of disbelief on her face. "It's rain, real rain," Ezekiel shouted, his voice ringing with excitement. "Look at how the trees are coming to life." The crowd slowly approached, their eyes wide as they witnessed the miracle unfolding before them. Silas stepped forward, feeling a sense of unity among them. "This is what we have been working for," he said, his voice firm. "Together, we can bring life back to our land." The townspeople began to cheer, their spirits lifting with each drop that fell. Silas knew that this moment was more than just rain. It was a turning point. The community was coming together, their hearts warming to the idea that change was possible. As the rain began to taper off, Silas turned to Ezekiel. "Shall we plant the last tree together?" he asked, gesturing to the final sapling they had saved for this special occasion. Ezekiel beamed with pride. "Yes, let's do it." Together, they knelt in the mud, hands working in harmony to place the sapling in the ground. As they covered the roots, Silas felt a deep connection to the earth, to Clara, and to the future they were building. When they finished, Silas stood back, wiping the rain from his brow. "This tree represents hope," he said, looking around at the gathered crowd. "It reminds us that even in the driest times, life can flourish again." The townspeople nodded, their faces reflecting a newfound belief. They had witnessed the power of resilience and friendship, and now they stood united, ready to nurture their land together. As the sun peeked through the clouds, Silas knew that the echo of their roots would resonate for generations to come. Share this story if you believe that hope can revive even the driest of lands. Leave a comment about a moment when perseverance turned your challenges into triumphs, and subscribe for more uplifting tales like this one.